Alright, hey guys, this is going to be our review for photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So the first thing that we're going to start with is the chemical reaction of photosynthesis. So this is essentially, whenever you see photosynthesis, what acronym do you think of? That acronym is WAC OG. So what does that stand for? Well, water, which is H2O. A is ATP or energy. C is carbon dioxide. This is carbon dioxide. So this is light energy. This would be the A for ATP. And then O is for oxygen. And G is for glucose, which is C6H12O6. All right, the two types of reaction in photosynthesis are one, light dependent. So it needs light for this to happen. And two, light independent. Also known as the Calvin cycle. The chemical reaction of cellular respiration, again, this is the acronym that should pop into your head, which is OG WAC. So that means, I'm going to write the names instead of the chemical formulas. Oxygen and glucose leads to water plus carbon dioxide and ATP, which is simply energy. So that's what those letters stand for: water, carbon dioxide, ATP, oxygen, glucose. All right, the 3 steps of aerobic, remember aerobic means with oxygen. Cellular respiration, well, my 3 steps, as we went over yesterday, are 1, glycolysis, 2, the Krebs cycle, which is also called the citric acid cycle. 2 names for the same thing. And my 3rd is the electron transport chain. All right, so if we look at the diagram down here, at the top, these 4 questions go over photosynthesis and cellular respiration separately. The diagram shows us how the 2 processes are related. So I'm going to go through and color code what the reactants and products are for each. I'm going to label cellular respiration maroon, and photosynthesis will be blue. So cellular respiration, the reactants, I'm going to label RCR, R for reactant, C for cellular, and R for respiration. I know that my reactants, if I look back at number 3, my reactants of cellular respiration are O and G for oxygen and glucose. So where I see oxygen, I'm going to put RCR. And for where I see glucose, I'll put RCR as well. Now, I don't formally see glucose, but I know glucose is a carbon compound and it's often found in food. It is a food. So I'm just going to write glucose in parentheses so that we know. And this is also a reactant of cellular respiration. My products of cellular respiration, I can consult my equation. I have WAC, water, ATP or energy, and carbon dioxide. So I see water. I will label it PCR for product of cellular respiration. Energy or ATP was also a product, and carbon dioxide is also a product. All right, we just did cellular respiration. Now we're going to move on to photosynthesis. So photosynthesis reactants, if I look in my equation, are WAC, so water, energy, and carbon dioxide. So I'm going to label them RP for reaction of photosynthesis. So that's water, energy, and carbon dioxide. My products of photosynthesis, I will label PP. I know what they are because if I look at my formula, I see OG. So remember, products are always to the right of the arrow. My products are oxygen and glucose, so I'm going to label oxygen product of photosynthesis, glucose as product of photosynthesis. So what we see here are all of these substances that are involved in these two processes. They're labeled, I see both maroon and blue on every substance. That means that they have a role in each of the processes. Now, if we look at oxygen, I see that I've labeled it as a product of photosynthesis and as a reactant of cellular respiration, and the same thing with glucose. That means that any product of photosynthesis then becomes a reactant of cellular respiration. Similarly, if I looked at all of the products for cellular respiration, I see they are all also labeled as a reactant of photosynthesis. Anything released from cellular respiration becomes the reactant for photosynthesis. So it operates in this cycle between cellular respiration and photosynthesis. All right, my last question, number 9 on this page, where is the energy being stored? Well, if you think of how you get energy, right, you have to eat. So I know that I'm going to look up here at food. So food, that's where energy is always stored. And if I just break it down to a fancier science term, well, food is glucose. And glucose is a carbon compound. So if I say this phrase in a more science vocabulary, I would say energy is being stored in a carbon compound. So flip your paper. All right, so we're going to go over what is the organelle shown above. Well, anytime you see these folds, so I see these little squigglies, these folds, that's going to indicate that it's an inner membrane of the mitochondria. So folds, think mitochondria. So therefore, this is the mitochondria. I know that both plants and animals have a mitochondria, and I know that all organisms, plants and animals, perform cellular respiration. Therefore, in the mitochondria, cellular respiration is the process that happens in the mitochondria. All right, number 10, which is true about the movement of electrons? So movement, remember, it's just like transport. And I'm going to go through these statements and see if they make sense. So in photosynthesis, glycolysis takes ATP and turns it into ADP. Well, glycolysis is not part of photosynthesis. Glycolysis is part of cellular respiration. So I'm writing CR for cellular respiration. B, in cellular respiration, electron transport takes place in the chloroplast. Well, no, like we just said, cellular respiration happens in the mitochondria, so this is false. Both are false. C, in photosynthesis, the energy for all steps comes from light. Well, if I go back to my equation for photosynthesis, I see that, yes, this reaction only occurs when there is light energy. So this is true. D, in cellular respiration, electron transport produces 6 molecules of ATP. Well, no, it produces between 24 and 34 molecules. Remember, this is like the mother lode of ATP. It produces the most out of any process. So I'm left with answer choice C. All right, so last but not least, we have this diagram down here that is also showing us the relationship between photosynthesis and respiration. And I'm going to be labeling them the same colors and the same symbols as I did before. So we're going to first go through the reactants of cellular respiration. So I know based on my formula for respiration, which is OG WAC, and photosynthesis is WAC OG. All right, so if I look, my reactant for cellular respiration, I have oxygen and glucose. So I'm going to label oxygen and glucose. Remember, RCR is simply a reactant of cellular respiration. My products of cellular respiration are water, energy, and carbon dioxide. So I see water and carbon dioxide. I don't see energy. If I did, I would label it. And that's it for cellular respiration. Now I'm going to look at photosynthesis. So my reaction to photosynthesis, I look at my equation. So water, energy, and carbon dioxide. So I see water, that is a reactant of photosynthesis. So R for reactant, P for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide is also a reactant of photosynthesis. Now I'm going to label my products of photosynthesis, which is oxygen and glucose. I know that because that's to the right of my arrow. So oxygen, glucose, and oxygen. Now that I have labeled all of my reactions and products, I'm going to look at what these arrows are telling me. So I have two processes, photosynthesis and respiration. If I zoom in on one of them, so let's do photosynthesis, I can see that when an arrow is leaving or pointing away from photosynthesis, that indicates that this is a product. So when an arrow is pointing away, it indicates a product. So I know that glucose is a product of photosynthesis. If the arrow is pointing toward the process or toward photosynthesis, I know that this is a reactant. So water would also be a reactant of photosynthesis. All right, if I look over to respiration, I know I have three arrows pointing either toward or away, so that means that I have reactants and products. So I'm going to look at my arrow pointing away, indicates that water is a product. My arrows pointing inward indicates that oxygen and glucose are reactants. Now I'm going to look and see if all of the reactants and products are indicated for photosynthesis. So I see, when I look at photosynthesis, the equation, I know that water and carbon dioxide are both reactants. I find water and carbon dioxide, they both have arrows pointing toward photosynthesis. We're good. Now I'm going to look at, are all of my products accounted for, meaning are there arrows from photosynthesis to all of its products? It has two products, oxygen and glucose. I find glucose, there is an arrow pointing from photosynthesis to glucose. I will find oxygen. I see there is no arrow that connects photosynthesis to oxygen, so I'm going to draw one. I'm drawing an arrow from photosynthesis to oxygen because oxygen is a product. And this concludes your review for photosynthesis and respiration. Good luck on your test. Make sure that you are annotating every single question. You are annotating every single question. And that's it. Get started.